Uh, I think with that, I will start um, with Emil Guillermo with the Filipino American National Historical Society Museum in Stockton. Emil, I have some slides for you. Hopefully, can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Great, great. Okay, so I have some slides that I will be showing for you.
Okay. We don't really need many slides, but I thought maybe you might show the slide of me because just so you see that I have my caricature on my Zoom picture.
I see that.
But on the other slide is what I look like in a Zoom meeting. This is a Zoom webinar, so maybe that's why it's different. Anyway, the Filipino American National Historical Society was founded by Fred and Dorothy Cordova in Seattle many, many years ago to tell the story of Filipino Americans. And the museum started in 2016, began raising money around 2000, and finally in 2016 opened up a 1,500 square foot gallery. And maybe we can show the gallery there, Steve.
Oh, sorry, just a second.
Sorry. And it's a modest gallery. Maybe the third slide. Uh,
This one right here.
yeah, yeah.
Could you see it?
It's a modest gallery. We put it up. Our budget, our yearly budget, is under between $20,000 and $30,000 if we're lucky. We don't have any grant money that we rely on. It's totally a volunteer organization. Um, so I've known about the museum for some time. I'm a career journalist. I used to work at NPR. I was a host of All Things Considered for a while. I've worked in newspapers and television, and they called me in January and asked me if I wanted to join the board. And I thought, well, I've been writing about Filipino Americans. History or journalism is the first draft of history, and so it just made sense to maybe join the board because the Filipino American story. There are 4 million Filipino Americans in the United States, but the story begins back in 1587, before the Mayflower. I bet you didn't know that. The first Filipinos came on a Spanish galleon and landed in Morro Bay, 1587. But the story begins or continues 1898, the first U.S. colony, the Philippines. Then in 1906, Filipinos went to Hawaii as cicadas, the cicada movement. In 1920, 30,000 Filipinos didn't need immigration papers because they were American nationals and they were allowed to come to mostly California. There were 30,000 Filipinos in California in 1930, and they settled in California mostly in the Central Valley, in Stockton, in the areas around Stockton. And this is why Filipino Americans are important to the rich Delta heritage that we're finding out about, today in this forum. 1934, though, things changed because of history and because of politics and because of the Tidings-McDuffie Act. Filipinos became not, they were no longer considered American nationals. They were considered aliens in 1934 and were asked to self-deport. In 1941, FDR said, "Well, look, maybe if you fought in the war, well, if you fought side by side in World War II, we'll grant you citizenship." 1941, that was, and then in 1946, the Rescission Act, where Truman went back on that promise. And Filipino veterans have been fighting to be made whole since 1941. And it wasn't until 2009 that they got some money back from that promise that FDR made in 1941. Of course, things changed in 1965 with immigration, the Immigration Act of 1965, and it really racist quotas against Filipinos that limited Filipino immigration to uh, less than 50 a year. That ended in 1965, creating a great wave of Filipino immigration. And in fact, the creation of a Filipino American middle class. But it wasn't until really 1965 also that you saw in the fields a real important part. And you can see here in this slide the campesinos and the labor, because this is what Filipino American life was in the valley. And it was 1965, the Great Delano Grape Strike. You might have heard of that. And you might have heard of it as being started by Cesar Chavez. In fact, Chavez is the face of that strike, but the people who began the strike, the people whose idea was it to go on strike, were Filipino Americans led by Larry Itliong. Larry Itliong, who became later a vice president of the UFW, but they were the first to strike in September of 1965. Cesar Chavez didn't have a union, didn't have a movement. Itliong was part of the AFL-CIO. They started the strike. Cesar Chavez joined later. And Larry Itliong only now is beginning to get some kind of recognition for leading the strike, which was a merger of civil rights and labor rights in 1965. Because if you recall, the Filipinos came to America in 1920 mostly to work in the fields, mostly to replace a labor force. And they went from San Francisco, from the boats, they went from the Philippines to San Francisco. They took yellow cabs into Stockton, and there in Stockton, they found their work in the fields, usually for 10 cents an hour, a dollar a day. And it wasn't until Itliong in 1965 with the strike, they were fighting, the UFW was fighting for a dollar 65. So this, or a dollar 45, excuse me, I gave them a raise there. So this is the Filipino American story. I've been covering it as a journalist to put history in front of people's minds. They asked me, the museum asked me to join them. You can switch to our website there, Steve. That's fine. They asked me to join them in January. I did as a board member. I became the director of the museum, volunteer position, in February, and then in March, COVID closed us down. And this is really the bulk of my presentation. I wanted to give you a sense of Filipino American history because no one knows that this is an American story, not just a Filipino story. It's really one of the great untold stories of American history. A lot of people, even if you go back to the Spanish American War, people forget, well, the Spanish American War begat the Filipino American War. And some people conflate the two. They forget that the outcome of that was to create Filipinos, or the Philippines as a colony, and to create these American nationals who came to the United States. And then to see how we've been treated throughout, I gave you just a little timeline. That's the Filipino American story. And there's 4 million of us now, and there's a great Filipino American middle class, but we're still growing and still trying to figure out where we belong in American society. So COVID shut us down in March. We were trying to figure out, how are we going to tell this story? How are we going to continue as a museum? And you can go back to that gallery shot, Steve, because the gallery shot shows, well, we had this is when the shot with all the people is when pre-COVID, when we were open. But and we had video, we had things on the wall, we had exhibits, we had things, and we were growing our things, our collections. And then when COVID hit us, we realized that we had to rethink what a museum was and what a museum does. I mean, do we share collections? Do we share artifacts? Or do we share stories? And do we share images? And do we put things into context by talking about our story and by letting people know what we've been, where we are, and how it's relevant today? And then how do we do all that while still being safe during COVID? So we closed in March. April, May, and June, we were just in disbelief like everyone else. What are we going to do? How are we going to do it? July and August, we began to prepare. Maybe we ought to go virtual, but how do we go virtual? If schools are thinking about Zoom, how do we use the Zoom technology? How do we do everything just to reach out to the people, not just in Stockton? We're a national organization. We're trying to reach Filipinos in New York, in Chicago, in LA, in Seattle. We're trying to build this network of people who would maybe come see our physical site someday as a mecca to come to Stockton, because Stockton in the 30s was the cradle of the modern Filipino American history. This was the place where all the Filipinos were, in Stockton. Our gallery is in downtown Stockton. And so we figured out what were our assets virtually. We didn't have any money. We weren't making the only our landlord did not believe in COVID and still cashed the checks and still expected them from us. So we looked at our assets in social media. We looked at what we'd had in the web, and I know it's the bane of democracy sometimes, but Facebook does exist, and love it or hate it or it's there, and people are there, and they go to Facebook. So we started using Facebook, and through the donations of function in Facebook, we were able to raise and let me not give that away yet. On a normal weekend, we would have 30 people fill this space. And maybe we'd get $100 in donations on a weekend. We're only open on the weekends. But because we went to Facebook and asked for donations to help keep us open and help pay the rent, we've been averaging since being shut down about $1,500, $2,000 a month in donations, unrestricted. We're a 501c3, so it's all tax deductible to the donor, and we've been able to stay alive. With that money, we've been able to develop uh, programs on Facebook through the Facebook Live that would just simply tell the Filipino American story. We don't necessarily lecture, but we have conversations. We I'm a practicing journalist. Um, So I interview a lot of people, and we have these stories live, usually in these virtual pop-ups, twice a weekend, Saturday and Sunday, and then sometimes during the week. We talk about the elections. We talk about we don't talk about it politically in terms of taking a stand, but we talk about Filipino Americans' historical connection, their political involvement, how the political class and the Filipino American community developed mostly out of uh, they were in exile from Filipino dictatorship in the Philippines, and they came to America. So a lot of rich Filipino American history comes out of that, and so between our Facebook donations and our Facebook lives, uh, we have managed from say getting 30 people into our gallery space once a weekend. Our average reach has been up to about 10,253 people in the last 30 days. Our engagement is up to about 1,700 people. The virtual museum, even though it is Facebook and some people may not be I mean, our younger crowd probably would despise us for using Facebook, and they'd say, "Go to TikTok, please." And at some point, we will. But for our generally older crowd, our older demographic, Facebook has been sufficient to keep our engagement alive during this COVID period. So I know that there are some bigger museums, some bigger entities here. We're a small fry micro org. Uh, I call it, we're a micro org community organization. And maybe, Steve, if you can show our Facebook page, um, we're and I use the term no, go to the Facebook page that shows the new yeah, see so here's our Facebook page. We continue, you can see we like to share pictures, and we ask people to share pictures with us, and our volunteers do that, and we use that as a basis to tell the story. And as I said, we've been averaging anywhere from 1,500 to 2,000 a month in donations just by using the donation function of Facebook. We are right there in the heart of downtown Stockton. Stockton is one of those cities that time is forgotten. It is maybe the Rust Belt of California, but it was the place where people flocked to, and in the 30s, and it's a place where Filipinos called home. So ideally, we see our physical plant growing or becoming a place where people, Filipinos all over, would want to come and see as a mecca, and just see where Filipino life, how Filipino life was. I recommend the book Little Manila is in the Heart by the late Professor Don Mabalan. She wrote an excellent personal history of the Filipino community in Stockton. And that is the basis of a lot of what we do. But of course, our sources are varied, and we tell a lot of personal stories with a lot of pictures. So just to wrap up, I just want to say that COVID forced us to use what we had. A lot of people take Facebook for granted. A lot of people sort of shunned Facebook for a while, but Facebook has been our friend and has kept us alive. And I think that no matter how big a community museum or how big a museum you are, the virtual tools I think are important and can provide uh, a pathway to engagement of reaching people where they are so that your museum stays relevant, stays alive, despite COVID, and all virtually online. So thank you very much. My name is Emil Guillermo. You can reach me at emilamok, EMILAMOK at gmail.com. That's EMILAMOK at gmail.com. And I'd love to answer any questions you might have in the question period. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you very much, Emil. I sure appreciate you talking, and it's looking forward to going back to the museum when it opens up.
Oh, thank you.
So the next speaker is going to be Kim Hayden, who is with the Center for Sacramento History, and she'll have a chance to talk a little bit about the Sacramento Archives Crawl.
Hi, thanks. Can you hear me?
We can.
Awesome. Okay, so my name's Kim Hayden. I am one of the archivists at the Center for Sacramento History, and I also chair the Sacramento Archives Crawl, which if you're not familiar with it, I'll give you a little brief rundown of what we normally do. And of course, what we had to do differently this year because of COVID. The crawl is in its 10th year, and what we do is we have 4 host archives throughout downtown Sacramento that host other smaller institutions from all around the region. So down through the Delta, up into the northern part of the Gold Country, like El Dorado County, Placer County, Nevada County. And so they come to our host institutions one day in October on a Saturday, and the host institutions are us at the center, the State Library, the State Archives, and the Sacramento Room at the Public Library. And so each of us have these other archives come in and set up tables, and they set up exhibits. And then we also have our own exhibits, and most of us give tours of our facilities. And we bill it as the one day of year that you can come in and see the archives, which, isn't normally open to the public like a library is. So we get pretty good engagement. It grows pretty much year over year. Some years there's lulls. It's really popular with students, and we have people who come back every year, and people were disappointed that they couldn't do it this year. And so it's a lot of fun. We have a bus that takes people between the 4 host sites, and we have a scavenger hunt and with prizes, and we have a little passport you can get stamped at each place. And it's fun. It engages people with what archives are, how you can use them for your own research, and they get to see little exhibits we usually have around 20 participating archives in addition to the host sites. So this year, we were starting to plan for it, and we had already come up with our theme, which was, it's our 10th birthday, celebrate. So we are coming up with a celebration theme. We have a theme every year, and the institutions can participate in the theme by making their exhibits along that theme. They don't have to, because sometimes they don't have stuff from that theme. And so then we got to that point of the theme, and then at our next meeting, we were like, there's no way that we can have the crawl. I mean, we were all at that point shut down, working from home. The Center for Sacramento History is a division of the city of Sacramento. So we've been working from home since March. And some of the other archives, they were able to go in sometimes not. Some weren't able to go in at all. The archives and special collections are really arranged. We have the one factor that makes it so you can participate in Archives Crawl as an institution is you have to be a collecting institution. So you can't be like just a historical society that doesn't collect, for instance. Or even a museum, like you have to have an archival collection. So we have institutions as big as the state archives, all the way down to like the Rockland Historical Society, you know, like just small places. Temple B'nai Israel here in Sacramento, the Jewish temple, they have a small archives. They participate every year. So we were trying to think, okay, what do we do this year? How can we don't want to go away for a year because we don't want people to forget about us and forget about how fun Archives Crawl is and not come back next year. But we obviously can't do it in person, and that is exactly what Archives Crawl is. It is an in-person experience. So I can't remember who suggested it. We have a committee of about 10, 15 people from different archives around the region. But eventually we came upon the idea, okay, what if we have the institutions that we normally ask to participate, what if they submit videos or photo exhibits instead? And we'll put them on our Facebook page, because Archives Crawl has a Facebook page. We also have, I think, a Blogspot or a WordPress page. That's our website. And we also have a YouTube page. So we thought, okay, so we could host the videos on YouTube and then link to them on our Facebook. And on Facebook, if someone submits like a photo exhibit, we could put it there too. And so we got really ambitious and we said, why don't we make the crawl this year instead of one day a week, or one day a month in October, let's make it every day, because October is Archives Month, right? So we're going to tell people that what we're doing for Archives Crawl this year is we're going to have a video or a little exhibit up on Facebook every single day of October. And that was really ambitious. And we went ahead and said that to the public. And then shortly after, we were like, wow, wait, what if we can't get that many archives to participate? I mean, we usually get around 20, 24. So, you know, some of us are going to have to do a couple videos or exhibits. And so we were starting to worry about that. And I put out the call for registrations from our participating institutions. And I got really good response. I didn't think a lot of people would actually participate. And all of us on the committee were ready to make like 5 videos each, you know, just to like fill in that space. But we ended up getting around 20 participants, and it was most of the people we usually get. Some weren't able to participate because they couldn't access their collections. And we got a few who hadn't participated in a few years because this made it easier for them to participate. Some places are so small or understaffed, they really can't spare a person to come in on a Saturday during the in-person crawl and man a table. They can't get volunteers to do it. So this enabled a few of the institutions who can't normally participate to participate. So put out the call for registrations, got around 20, and then I created a really elaborate spreadsheet of who was participating, what they were going to be sending in. I asked people to tell me, you know, are you going to be submitting a video? Are you going to be submitting a photo exhibit? When I say photo exhibit, I mean just like how any of us would share our photos on Facebook. You know, you pop 3 photos up in a post and have a little caption for each one. That was what our exhibits were for the most part. And so we set a deadline, everyone got their stuff in. We created a system for us to upload the videos to YouTube. And then we had a posting schedule, so we'd be posting every day. And we were still worried that we weren't going to get enough content. And we ended up getting 35 total submissions. So we had extra. We had more than one for every day. So we had to double up several days. And it was really cool, and it worked out well. We ended up, so I pulled the stats at the end of October just to see like how we did. And we don't really ever, we use the social media throughout the year to advertise and promote the archives crawls coming up, but we don't do anything otherwise. And so, obviously our Facebook usage, user numbers went way up. We got a lot more followers. And then by the end of the month, we had reached a little over 15,000 users just in that month. And then on YouTube, our videos, which we'd linked to on Facebook, those had gotten more than 2,000 views. And that's way more people than come to the crawl in person. We don't have an exact number for how many people come, but we usually get between 250 and 450 at each location. And a lot of those are going to be repeat people. So it's hard to say if we're getting like 300 or 1,000 people, but we, more than doubled, tripled. We got way more than that online, and we got more followers because of that. And I like to think that our institutions got more followers too. And I think like a lot of us, social media has become more important during COVID. I know that at the center, we never posted online. We never posted to our social media. It was very rare. Mostly it was to promote events. So we have started doing that at the center. As soon as we got sent home, as archivists, we work with collections. So there's not as much we can do from home. So we immediately started scrambling. Well, what are we going to do? And one of the first things we thought of was, okay, let's start doing social media. So we now post to social media every day, and we're reaching tens of thousands of people each month. So just knowing that, I thought, okay, that will probably work for Archives Crawl too, and it did. So in addition to posting pre-made videos, which some people had already had made, like, we made this last year, we're going to use it. Great, let's do that. We also did a few Facebook Lives. So the Marshall Gold Discovery in Coloma, they did a little tour of their site, and that was really well received. That got, I think, around 500 views or something. And then at the center, we did 2 Facebook Lives. We did one of our film collection, and then we did one of an exhibit that our curatorial assistant put together on the Days of 49, which was this really silly event they had here in Sacramento in 1922. And those were both like insanely well received. So I found that the Facebook Lives were really popular, and that wasn't something I expected. I just didn't think they would have the engagement that they did. But the Days of 49 one in particular, I was doing the video for that, and Stacy was walking people through the exhibit, and we just got so much engagement. People were interested, they were asking questions, and that just surprised me. And I don't know why it surprises me. I guess I just think that other people are going to think this stuff is boring, where we don't. But so in addition to that, with the center, we tied into the crawl by posting the mini exhibit on Days of 49 on our own page, our own Facebook page every day leading up to that Facebook Live. So yeah, I guess that's kind of it. I guess the main takeaway is that it really does make a difference, like to be posting online. And like what Emil said, like Facebook is still relevant. I think a lot of us do kind of take it for granted, like, oh, it's this old system, not a lot of people are using it anymore, but they are. I mean, we got way more views of our stuff on Facebook than on YouTube. We reached so many more people than we would ever reach because people are sharing. yeah, it's like so many more, and I'm hoping and I'm interested to see the numbers next year, or if we are able to do it in person next year, whenever we're able to do it in person again. If those numbers go up, if we got new people. So I don't know, I'm seeing a lot of value in making sure you continue to be out there and putting yourself out there in a new way during this time when we can't have people visiting us for research or for our exhibits or anything. So that's it. I also look forward to your questions.
Well, thanks a lot, Kim. I sure appreciate it. I wanted to let the panelists know that I've managed to fix the issue with video. So if you do want to, so if you wanted to start your own video, you now have the capability to do that. So Allie, are you available?
Could you hear that? I'm sorry. I'm trying to call in through.
I can hear you.
Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and try to start my video and see how that goes.
Okay, great.
All right, so hi, I'm Alexandra Kowalski, or Allie. I'm the programs coordinator at the Sacramento History Museum. I've worked at the Sacramento History Museum for over 5 years now, but I left for 2 years to go work at the Hagen Museum in Stockton. And I just started back here again March 17th, St. Patrick's Day, which was coincidentally the day we completely shut down for 7 months. And it was a bit of a panic mode here, and we also were a little bit naive. We expected that March, April, maybe a little bit of May, we'd be closed, but then this pandemic would get under control and we'd be back up and running. So in our mind, we had to come up with a short-term plan, just to address those 2 months or so. And we weren't really thinking anything about long-term. Our museum is all about Sacramento history, but we do focus on kind of the gold rush era, roughly 1848 to 1880. And we tend to see a lot more tourists than local Sacramento residents. There seems to be a belief in our local community that, oh, I went there in 4th grade, I've seen the museum, I don't necessarily have to go back. But in all of that, we tried to focus on who we could reach. Tourists, we haven't had much luck with social media. They kind of happen upon us. We're right next to the Railroad Museum and a few other museums, so we get mostly walk-in traffic. And for our local audience, school groups are actually much more popular with us than just regular admissions are. So we wanted to make sure that we were relevant in people's minds for these 2 months, but also that we could do something for parents stuck at home with their school children who hadn't gotten to finish out the school year and who might not know how to continue their children's education from home. So we came up with this homemade history concept. We normally have quite a few different school programs. One talks about the Nisenan, the local tribe in the area. We have one that talks about heading west, how people traveled here by wagon or ship, one that focuses on the gold rush, one that focuses on California agriculture, and then we have one that looks at the underground tours or how the city flooded and lifted in the 1860s. And so we decided to take each of these concepts and turn them into something we could put on our website that people could enjoy at home, hopefully get some educational value out of. But we also wanted to entertain people at the same time. Because we had never done anything like this before, we joined a bunch of webinars those first couple weeks that everyone was staying at home. And by and large, what it was saying is people were anxious, people were scared, people were bored, and things that were entertaining as well as calming were really what they were looking for in terms of social media or online activities. And at this point, we were all home in our individual homes. We, despite getting some city and county funding, are a 501c3 nonprofit, and we don't have a large budget. So we didn't have any laptops, cameras, cell phones, tripods, things like that that we could use. We were all using what we had individually at home. And most of us, if we do live with a significant other or a roommate, they were essential workers. So we didn't even necessarily have someone to film us as we were doing things. So we came up with really creative ways to try to create videos and create other content. And we have a small education staff. We adopted some of our front desk staff during this time because we were closed to the public to become ad hoc education members, and we would all meet once a week and talk about the topic for that week and kind of divvy up different tasks. Our education director found a program called VoiceThread, where you can kind of do pre-recorded PowerPoint slides that you can also annotate on the slide, and people can watch it through while they hear your voice and see the things you're pointing out on the different slides. And so she did a little introduction to each week's theme, and then we created word searches. We created different activities you could do at home. For Headed West, we created a video on how to make hardtack and how to dry fruit. We also used tape to mark out in someone's driveway how big a wagon would be, and did a video about the different things you might want to take with you west and whether it would fit in your wagon space or whether it wouldn't. As I mentioned, these were all done with our own electronics at home. They weren't the best quality by and large, and they weren't consistent. Some people had filmed them with their cameras vertical, up and down, some horizontal, some were really far away, some were basically a selfie video. But our idea was we wanted to get content out there as fast as possible. And we are going back now and trying to refine those things and edit them because they were surprisingly popular with our audience, and we're even getting some teachers now that want to use them in their distance learning programs. So we worked on that. We came up with 5 weeks of content, and then we were disappointed to realize that the world wasn't going to open back up. And how were we going to continue to stay relevant to our audiences? And like a lot of you said, social media has been the trick by and large. We're not getting a lot of traffic to our website, even though we're posting videos there. We're not getting a lot of traffic to YouTube either, as Kim mentioned. It really is Facebook. Sorry, I don't have anything more profound that Emil and Kim haven't already said, but Facebook is where our audience is. A lot of it, I think, is the age demographics. We have tried TikTok. We started a TikTok account during this. We haven't found much luck in finding an audience there, but we found a way that you can share your TikTok videos on Facebook, and then they do really well once they're shared on Facebook. We also have an Instagram and a Twitter. Those have gotten a little bit of engagement, especially because being in Old Sacramento waterfront is very active on their Instagram, and they like to share things that we post that we're doing, but really Facebook is by and large where we found our audience and where we've been able to grow our audience during all of this. And one of the really exciting things that we found is we are growing our audience back into that tourism market that we thought we wouldn't be able to access. Because before, social media was very much in California, and now we found that we have followers from all over the country, some international followers that are interested in what we're doing, which is really fantastic. Yeah, and then I am going to speak to Kim's kind of shout out to Facebook Live. We started doing what we called Museum Mondays at the beginning of September. So every Monday at 3 o'clock, we do a Facebook Live video. They all have a different topic, but each month has a different theme. So for September, we highlighted our new exhibit, California in Print. For October, we highlighted, that was California Print too, that's kind of our beginning, so we started mid-September, went into October. November, it was medical history, that's what we're working on right now. And in December, we're doing multicultural heritage in Sacramento. And each of these videos dives into a different topic for about 10 to 20 minutes. We've done, we talked about May Woolsey, close to Halloween, who is a girl whose items we have in our collection. She unfortunately passed away from encephalitis over in West Sacramento when she was 13 years old, but her mother packed all her things away in a trunk that wasn't found for nearly 100 years. And so we have all of these items belonging to this one girl, and we can talk about her. So we did that. We've done story times once a month. We're doing one on cholera next week. And we found that these videos are getting huge engagement, and we are getting those questions we often don't get when we produce something on Zoom. People really are asking questions. They have positive comments, and we can engage with them in real time, which we've really missed. And even if we only get 30 or 40 people watching it live, these videos get posted to our Facebook page after, and then they're getting 900 to 1,200 views over the course of a few weeks. They have been incredibly popular for something that you really just need a smartphone to do, and we've kind of been blown away by all of that. So I have millions of other different virtual programs we've tried, but those are kind of our simplest, easiest to do programs, and then I'm, like everyone else, I'm happy to answer questions when the time presents.
Well, great. Thank you very much, Allie. I appreciate that. It did occur to me that I forgot to introduce you, so I apologize for that.
No problem at all.
The next person we're going to have speaking is Stephen Dilbert with Impact Foundry. And he's going to be talking a little bit about some of the resources that are out there during the pandemic. And obviously, we're a little short on funds right now, so it's good to hear about that. Stephen, are you available?
Yeah, thanks, Blake.
Great. Oh, nice. I like the.
Yeah, I tried to have fun with the video filters, make it interesting. I don't have a PowerPoint to share. I just have a Word document. I just wanted to tell everyone just real quick, if you haven't heard about us, the Impact Foundry is Sacramento's nonprofit resource center. So our goal is to provide training, consultation, expertise that people need to grow their mission. So COVID has been pretty interesting. Like Allie, I started my job right around quarantine. I started 2 days before quarantine. I am the membership manager at the Impact Foundry. We have about 640 organizations that we work with right now. And that was a blast to get onboarded and try to learn those 630 or so during this whole process. But we very quickly pivoted to online. We really revamped our social media platform across Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter. Tried to bring all our workshops online as well. So that is where we have been, and I will share my screen here. So I want to talk to you about some of the funding opportunities. I will say, as just a statistic to start with, we are looking at potentially 30 to 40% of museums and historical societies facing some chance of closure this year because of COVID. So it has been very difficult, and I feel for everyone that is trying to work through this. We have a grant research program that we work with. So I took a look at, just made a search within California, came up with about 325 different opportunities in the area that would fall into heritage and like historical society funding areas. About 300 or so popped up. If you look at this little spot down here with the bullets, that's what it kind of breaks into. So a majority fall under education and outreach or program related. I will say the biggest advice that we're giving people when it comes to funding right now is to highlight the pulse of the nation. So the biggest things that we're facing right now in the country are health and racial equity issues. So a lot of the issues with COVID have really highlighted the health disparities and members of the Black, Indigenous, people of color communities, how they are being affected by COVID. The other thing that people are talking about right now is extrajudicial killings, police violence. So that is also a hot topic. So we are asking people, if you have the ability to evolve your mission to involve racial and health inequity issues, that is a great way to get people to recognize you. So that's a good way to get donors and funders to take a look at what you're working on. And the schedule that we've been giving people is in November. This is when you hit your social media campaigns and you say, this is all the stuff that we've done through this year to kind of pivot. Here's all the new stuff we've come up with, and really inspire your donors. December is when you ask your donors to give you money. So you've told them all throughout November, hey, this is what we're doing. December is the time where you ask. And January, we're asking everyone to take time to actually call your donors, engage with them in a way that they haven't been engaged with for a while. So actually calling them on the phone, not just sending an email and thanking them for what they've been working on. The other thing I can think of, and this might not fall within your capacity, so just take this with a grain of salt, but some of the stuff that we've been working on here is actually doing COVID-19 related things like outreach. There's some grants with that if you can use your social media platform to pass out information from the county or the state, or Another idea that I've had that we've been looking at is, now that there is a chance that competent leadership will roll out a vaccine soon, you really should be looking at what they call points of vaccination. So it's called pods. The idea behind a pod is to take a community trusted organization or location and actually use it as a place to dispense vaccines. And there will be emergency funding around that, especially from FEMA and the government. So if you have the capacity to turn your parking lot or your organization into a place that could be a vaccination point, I would encourage you to reach out to any contacts you have in county health departments or state health departments and see what level of engagement you can have with that. So start looking at those opportunities, how you could get emergency funding. That's about all I got. Thank you, everyone.
Okay. Thank you so much, Stephen. I really appreciate that. So, because obviously this is is a big issue right now in terms of being able to get make sure that the lights will stay on. Next person I wanted to invite was Robin Kroc with the Delta Conservancy. I'm gonna just show, I'm gonna share my screen and the web page for Prop 68.
Great, thank you,
Robin?
Blake.
Yeah, Robin, okay, I just wanna make sure you're there.
I am here.
Good.
So thank you, Blake, and the Delta Protection Commission for the opportunity to provide you with an update and information about the Conservancy's Community and Economic Enhancement Grant Program. For those of you who were at the forum last year, I did provide some information then, but we were in the process of developing the grant guidelines at the forum last year, or during the forum last year, and we did open the program in January. The program is funded through Prop 68, and Prop 68 gives the Conservancy the opportunity to provide grants to support Delta communities, basically. It is important to note, especially thinking back to the list that Stephen just shared, that as a general obligation bond, Prop 68 funding can only go to capital outlay projects. So we took last year the input that we got from the forum and from other places in developing the grant guidelines, and developed three program priority areas for funding through this program. The first one is recreation and tourism, then historic and cultural preservation, and environmental education. We intentionally kept these fairly broad because we know that the Delta isn't one homogeneous community, but is made up of diverse communities and needs. And I have to say, I was excited to hear the National Park Service presentation this morning on the National Heritage Area designation and kind of what that means, because our priority areas fit so neatly into supporting that exciting new designation for the Delta. So for the sake of time, I am going to just guide you to the website and the guidelines to find more information about the priority areas. So the logistics of the program, I want to touch on those because it's actually one of the exciting things about the program. So first of all, as opposed to a lot of, especially government grant programs, this is a non-competitive program. So what that means is that we're able to interact with applicants before the final proposal is submitted and before an award is made. This allows us to provide feedback on drafts and provide other kinds of assistance as appropriate. This is, like I said, one of the components of the program about which we're the most excited, because it's really a great opportunity for us to really work with Delta communities on what's most important to the residents and businesses of the Delta. Along with it being non-competitive, we have a rolling deadline, or basically no deadline. So what that means is that there is no application deadline, and we accept concept proposals on a continuous basis. And if you can see on the website under resources, that first line is the grant guidelines. The second line is the concept proposal template. So anybody is welcome to go on our website at any time and download the concept proposal template and submit that to us. I do suggest that you look at the grant guidelines first, just to gather more information about whether or not, what's an eligible applicant, what's an eligible project, things like that. Once we confirm that the project and the applicant are eligible, we have a pretty stringent review process for the concept proposal. We want applicants to be successful. So we provide feedback on the concept proposal that will help ensure your success as an applicant, even if it means taking a little bit longer to submit a final proposal. That means that there will be less work to do after the award is made and before a grant agreement can be reached. The more complete and finalized the application is, when we can provide a recommendation to the board on that application, on that proposal. So one of the main things that I want to say today is, as we were just talking about the need for funding, well, we've received some really exciting and interesting proposals from diverse areas of the Delta so far this year. We encourage those interested in the program or who think they might have an eligible project to reach out to us. We do have more funding, and even just go to the website, download the concept proposal, as I said, take a look at the grant guidelines. Please feel free to contact me or my colleague Dylan Moore, who works with me on the Prop 68 team. You can find us both on the website. My email is robin, ROBYN, .KROCK at deltaconservancy.ca.gov. And again, that is also on the website. And if you have any questions, if you're not sure whether your project might be eligible, about the timing of it, any of those questions, please feel free to reach out to us. So that was it. I'm happy to answer any questions now as well.
Okay. Well, thank you so much, Robin. What I'm going to do right now is I'm going to pose one question that was put in the Q&A. And then I'm going to also go through the attendees list and make sure that everybody has the ability to unmute themselves. The question I had was from Trevor Rice with National Park Service. Could presenters share how they've addressed the challenges of accessibility and Section 508 compliance in social media, particularly live video, regarding captioning and audio description?
So I assume that is not just for me, that's for the.
No, this is this would be for probably for Emil, Ali, and Kim.
I am fully willing to admit that we are not addressing all of those issues right now. We are aware that it is a problem. We have looked into live closed captioning. It's quite expensive. And we are also reaching out to see if we can get a sign language interpreter to do our Museum Monday Facebook Lives with us. But right now that is a real concern of ours that we're not quite sure how to address.
Same here. I feel like we just did everything so quickly and so just by the seat of our pants and threw things together that we didn't think of all of these things and take the time to consider this. So yeah, we didn't do anything about it.
I will say that it's come up only as people have made a request and then we've tried to accommodate. I know that there are AI apps like Otter that will give a transcription. I know that in YouTube you can get some transcription or some captioning there. We are on YouTube. We have a channel there, but most of our work is in Facebook. And I know that when I've been on Zoom and I had a hearing impaired person, she did have an interpreter with her, and we were able to continue on. And I guess it was sort of well, it wasn't really transparent. It was not apparent to people who may have been viewing it. But I would have to say that, like the other panelists, we put things together quickly, and as things came up, we addressed them. So I'm sure that when we'll have a little more time, we'll be a little more thorough.
Does anybody in the audience have any questions?
I do, and I just got unmuted. Thank you. This is Matt Holmes.
Great.
And I typed in here because I did not know there was a set aside out of Prop 68 for the Delta Conservancy. That's awesome. I also love the phrase non-competitive, that they can talk to us. And so I just found the website, Robin, thank you for that. And I'm trying to read frantically. But is there I don't see like an eligibility map or, a site map in the guidelines. Is there a link on the website that I've missed?
So I did just respond to you in the chat.
Oh.
The Conservancy, that's okay though. The Conservancy works within the legal boundary of the Delta and Sassoon Marsh.
Okay.
So any of our programs, that's the geographic eligibility basically.
So how does this interface with the Stockton exclusion from the Delta Heritage area?
The Delta Heritage Area map is slightly different than the legal boundary of the Delta map. So if you look at the map of the legal boundary of the Delta, part of Stockton does fit into that.
Great news. Thank you. So I'm looking for a legal boundary map of the Delta. And who defines that? Is that a California thing, or is that a Department of Interior thing, or?
Blake?
Yes, that is, it was set by the legislature back in the 50s.
Cool.
And so if you can, I can reach out to you and get you at least a decent map of it.
I just found the Department of Water Resources has a GIS layer. Awesome.
Right, yeah, that's a good way. That's a good boundary right there.
Okay, that's great. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Hi, can you hear me? I'm Douglas Shah with the Locke Foundation.
We can hear you.
Oh, yeah, okay. Well, I have a question that is for Stephen. Okay, well, I heard that Stephen mentioned that they can provide training because the Locke Foundation now is now engaged in a big program of oral history. So we need a lot of training in the film editing, video editing. So does Foundry provide us such assistance?
Hey, how you doing?
Hi.
And you said it was it Daniel?
Douglas.
Douglas.
Yeah.
Shoot, I knew it was a D, and I was like, I'm gonna get this wrong, aren't I? Yeah, Douglas, we actually don't have that training, but we work with a group of nonprofit consultants. We have about 70 or so, and I would get you in contact with them so that they could set something up with you.
Yeah.
We do have people that have expertise in that area.
Yeah, because that's totally new to us, and we want to grasp it. Yeah. Thank you.
Gotcha. Yeah, feel free to send me an email at sdilbert@impactfoundry.org. I'll help you out.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
And actually, one of the things I will do is I will, after the completion of this, I will make sure that we have contact information for the speakers.
Thank you, Blake.
Mhm.
Call from Simple Telecom. Call from Simple Telecom.
Blake, are you still open for questions?
Yeah, please proceed.
This is Bob Benedetti, and this is for Robin. I wondered if she could define what you mean by capital. Does that mean that salaries could not be included in a grant?
That is correct.
So it has to be not just bricks and mortar, but equipment or costs of obtaining resources?
Yes, in general. In terms of, I don't want to just say yes to any equipment. There are some ways that would fit. I mean, that's kind of, equipment is a pretty broad category, and so it would depend on the particular project, but yes, in general.
Thank you.
Hey, Robin.
I'm sorry?
This is Eric Vink. My understanding is a little bit different. If you're working on a capital type project, and obviously it takes staff hours to complete that, those can be covered. Am I incorrect?
Yes, and I'm sorry, I may have misunderstood the question. They're hours that go in particular to that project, to the capital project, can be covered obviously within reason, but they have to go to a capital project. It's not like program staff salaries. I apologize if I misunderstood.
Right. Let me ask a specific question. If you were producing an exhibit, a film, a book, other publications, or materials to distribute, would any aspect of that production be covered?
I am not comfortable providing a definite answer to that. I would be glad to talk to you further and look into that a little bit more. There's some, it depends in there. So I would be, like I said, glad to find out a little bit more about exactly what you're talking about and make sure that I am giving you an accurate answer.
Thank you.
Okay. Well, I think we're at 12:18 right now. Maybe one more question if it's still out there. If not, then I guess we'll take a lunch break. A couple things I wanted to mention before we go to lunch, though. One, as I've noted before, the link for the road trip session at 1 o'clock is different. It's a different Zoom link. So that information will be up. You should have received an email from me that has that revised information, or at least the different link for the 1 o'clock. But that will also be posted on this call as well, and I'll put it in the chat. So you can go to that if necessary. The other thing I wanted to point out is that we do have lightning talks and videos that were posted to YouTube. So the email that I sent out yesterday has a link to that playlist, and also you can find it if you go to the Delta Protection Commission YouTube page. So with that, we'll take a break right now, and we'll look forward to talking to you at 1 o'clock. Thank you so much to all the panelists.